Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. I'm Justin, and tonight we are going to discuss 2006's Slither, directed by James Gunn and starring Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks, Gregg Henry, Tania Saulnier, and Michael Rooker. May-December married couple Grant and Starla soon find their marriage tested after a meteorite crashes into the town of Wheelsey, South Carolina. The meteor brings with it a malevolent alien parasite that infects Grant, who in turn begins to infect the entire town. Along with her past love, Chief Bill Party, Starla and the remaining residents of the town must band together to destroy the parasite before they too become infected. A delicious blend of laughs, shocks, gross out moments, and scares. Slither is for the horror fan looking for sci fi thrills and over the top entertainment. Also joining me tonight is my fabulous co host, Zena Dixon. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bite. I'm Justin. With me is the amazing, wonderful, beautiful, talented, amazing Zena Dixon. How you doing tonight, Zena?
I'm doing well, Justin. Thank you so much for that intro. Thank
Well deserved and
you.
true. But I'm so excited. We're going to be talking about 2006's Slither tonight. And this is one I've been wanting to talk about with you for a really long time. So we'll jump right in. As always, everybody, no spoilers right away. We will tell you when we're going to do some spoilers, where we then discuss performances, suspense, the ending, etc. But for now, you're safe. I'll say this is one I've loved from the moment I saw it. It came out at the height of like zombie-esque movies when they were at their peak. And although this really isn't technically a zombie movie, there's a lot of like tropes and behaviors and themes that are reminiscent, I feel, of the zombie genre. So when I started watching this and saw what kind of movie it was going to be, I was so into it. And I think, if you look at some of the criticisms at the time, they were kind of talking about the people that didn't like this movie were like, we're so tired of zombie movies, blah, 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 which also makes me think like people did kind of look at it as sort of a zombie movie. And I think that they judged it because of the oversaturation of time. I mean, now don't get me wrong, I love zombie movies and I love that era, like Dawn of the Dead, 28 Days Later. It was right before The Walking Dead came out. I get when something like a theme or a genre, subgenre is being like oversaturated and how you can only do so much. But I really, like we always say, I think every film needs to be judged on its own merit and judged based on who is the audience for this movie. And this one, it's a B, it's a throwback to like B science fiction flicks from back in the day. And it has that theme and that idea, but it does sort of combine some of the things people liked about zombie movies. And again, when I say zombie movies, probably more leaning towards like Return of the Living Dead, I Want Your Brains zombies versus like more traditional Night of the Living Dead. But it's still, well, director James Gunn had written Dawn of the Dead, which I did not know. And so, obviously he's gone on to have a super successful career, but it would make sense that some of those themes are wrapped up in this. But anyway, I was so on board. I loved the Dawn of the Dead remake. In fact, I think that or the 1990 version of Night of the Living Dead are my two favorite zombie movies, and I feel like that's here. But what's great about Slither is that it's almost like it's a comedy, and it really blends the horror and the comedy in a way that's intentional and really well done. The performances are great, but like I feel like what makes this special is it's almost like a romantic comedy within a zombie movie, but it has, it takes place like in a small southern, well, I don't know if they're south, but they have those sort of southernisms of like hillbillies. They're not really like making fun of them. They're like in on the joke. It's like the hillbillies in the film are almost like laughing at themselves so we can laugh at them. There's a lot of fun. It's just fun. It's a really fun movie. And I think that the performances are solid. I love Elizabeth Banks in it. I think Nathan Fillion is horrific and Michael Rooker, all of the above. But I saw this movie. I totally dug it, totally loved it. I'll have a little rant. I'll get into it now. where it is very highly reliant upon CGI, but I feel like sometimes CGI is better. I love practical effects, but I feel like now if you watch any sort of critics or reaction videos, people, I feel like it's like the thing to say now is, oh, I love practical effects, or oh, practical effects, man, there should only ever be practical effects. Listen, I'll say it too. I love practical effects, but sometimes CGI is better. Sometimes it
Yeah.
does it. It does what it's supposed to be. And mark my words, I feel like the CGI of the like early 2000s, where it was like getting at its sort of running up to its own peak, is going to be nostalgic. We're like people now, I feel like younger generations coming up are going to be like, wow, I really love 2000 CGI in the same way that people now are all like, practical effects, they're so much better. And again, I'm teasing, but I also have just noticed, I'm like, I don't think it needs to be said anymore. I feel
Right.
like people all the time are like, I love practical effects. Like, me too. So do you, I'm sure, Zena. So does everybody. We all love them. Like, I feel like people are saying it almost as if like it's a revelation, or they're like, I don't know. CGI though in this movie, I think is solid. And I think it makes it more fun. And I remember at the time being like, because it has that gross factor in the best possible way. Gross, like it's intentionally gross. It wants to gross you out. And you are like, there's a lot about it. Like all the things coming out of him,
Mhm.
Michael Rooker's character Grant, like his name is Grant. Like that's funny. This is funny stuff. Um, the things coming out of him, but like with Brenda, everything about Brenda, which we'll get into that scene when we get into spoilers, or at least I'll get more into it. But that is, my favorite of all the like gross, the perfect horror and comedy. I feel like is encapsulated in the scene with Brenda. But
Mhm.
anyway, I just love this movie. I am going to go on and on about it as we discuss this. And I wish I could come up with 1,000 adjectives, but basically it comes down to it's a fun, scary, enjoyable, romantic comedy,
Mhm.
zombie, pod people. That's what I meant to say too. It's like zombies, but it's really more like pod people or puppet
Right.
masters. But it plays with the zombies. It like brings them all together and in a really great way. But Xena, what do you think of Slither?
Well, first, I just love how happy you are about this movie, and I'm right there with you. It's been years since I've seen it. I honestly think the last time I saw it was back in 2006, So just to watch it again, it felt like a brand new movie, and I agree with you. It is such a fun movie. James Gunn, he started working, I think one of his first jobs, he worked with Trauma Entertainment. And I 100% see this with this movie. I see pieces of like the Toxic Avenger, Romeo and Juliet, I just feel
Yes.
like he wanted to pay homage to the horror movies that he loved. Like even like there's like The Fly, Basket Case, like everything mixed in one. And I had so much fun watching this. I laughed out loud so many times, which we'll get into. And it's just like I forgot how funny it was. Like I remember I liked it when I watched it. I think I went to the theaters to check it out. But yeah, I had again, it's a lot of fun. It is like a horror comedy. I love seeing like just like the mutation going on. There was like a hint of some society, like a society scene, the one which we'll talk about. It just felt like it's hilarious, it's fun. The action scenes are great. Like it's a great blend of like horror that's in there. It had like a feel like of Tremors. I know I mentioned a whole bunch of movies, but I just remember watching Tremors. I recently just rewatched it and I had fun with that one as well. So it kind of gave me that. And I just love the fact that it just seemed what was at the forefront with this project. They wanted people to have a good time. They wanted people to be entertained. I love their little town, What was that event? Dare Cheer? I want to go to Dare Cheer. I don't know about killing the deers. I don't think that God, like they were bringing God into it. So, but yeah, I had like a lot of fun with it. And I feel like if you're someone who has not seen it, or if it's been a while since you've seen it, I think that it's time for a rewatch.
Could not agree more, obviously. And from here on out, everybody, spoilers. Our non-spoiler review are clearly we love it. It's funny, it's scary, it's great. Go watch it. But spoilers, here we are. Listen, you said it, Zena. If you haven't seen it in a while, or if you have not seen it, if you're new to horror movies, this is definitely one that needs to be added to your list.
Mhm.
I yes, it's I don't, it's not been as long as 2006. I'd say I revisit this one every year or so, every other year, but it has been a while since I have watched it. And I always had it on DVD, and I finally got like the Shout Factory Collector's Edition
Right.
Blu-ray. And watching it, rewatching it last night for us to prepare for this episode, it looks like just a brand new movie. And really, because of the way it was shot, the cinematography and everything, it's one of those things that you get just as much pleasure out of the look of the movie, I feel like, or I did, but also not to mention the actual performances, the drama, the comedy, the scares. And yes, I didn't think about it, but when the moment you said Tremors, it's very much of that quality, which I think is a it's one of those things that I feel like does get overlooked. I feel like everybody always loves Tremors.
Mhm.
Everybody always loves movies like Slither, but again, they're not like considered the top tier, and now we love Suspiria, we love Halloween, we love Texas Chainsaw, but these movies tend to not get those on those top of those lists very often, and they
Mhm.
deserve to be. And because again, it's what is the audience? I always like to think when I'm doing reviews, like written reviews or even reviews on these shows, my thought is always when I'm reviewing a film, it's what do I like about the movie? What do I consider to be good from like an academic standpoint? But also other big, like the third factor is who is this movie made for? It might not be made for me, but if I'm reviewing it, I'm going to think, is this right for that audience? And I feel like if you're a fan of horror movies in general, you're going to love it. If you're a fan of comedies, you're going to love it. Science fiction, you're going to love it. One of the things I like about this movie is the intelligence that goes into it, or it doesn't over explain everything to the audience, but it gives you enough and a little bit more. People are not stupid in this movie. What I mean by that, because there are possible solutions. I can't remember what episode we were talking about, but I've mentioned before that I really like films where it's possible for, like, say you're a vampire. I like the vampire movies where like people can become not a vampire by the end, like if you kill the head vampire, versus movies where like once you become a vampire, you're forever a vampire.
Right.
Unless
Right.
that's like, it's fine if that does happen. But I do like that there's an option. And in this movie, like we said, spoilers, people can be fixed in the end. And or there's options like covering your mouth. Like when the first big explosion happens with Brenda, you know, Bill and Elizabeth Banks' character, Starla, they get on something to just cover their mouth, and that's a solution. And I really liked my favorite sequence in the movie, and it's really speaking to the horror fan in me, is the Kylie sequence when the teenage girl, when she's first attacked. I feel like that's the most traditional horror movie sequence of the film. But
Mhm.
one of the things that I really liked about it is when the worm slug is trying to like get to her, you get a glimpse for a second of the world, like where it previously was. And I like that because of her character, you get to find out a little bit more of the motivation and what's going on. And I just really enjoy that about horror movies or movies in general when they give you that a little bit of an explanation and it's interesting. It doesn't give you all the answers, but enough that you're sort of like you get the magnitude of what we're dealing with here, and there's sort of a map now. You have like a map you can look at. Again, well, what did you think of the performances? You lead us off. Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks, Michael
Sure.
Rooker. What'd you think?
I thought that everyone did a great job. They were very believable. I love Michael Rooker. I feel like he did such a great job as, Grant. Like, kind of like what you said. Why would you do that? Imagine having a kid and you just name them your last name Steele, Steele, Steele. Like
Right.
why would you
Nina
do that?
Zena.
You
But I
know?
believe it in this town. Speaking of this town, I can see it.
Right? I believe it too, and people just kind of just let it go. And I liked Starla. You could tell that she didn't marry for love, but more for security, as far as that goes and everything like that. I really love the mayor, um, Jack McReady. He really made me laugh when, one of the first scenes we see him and driving through the town, and I'm like, gosh, again, I forgot, so I didn't know he was like the mayor. And it was like, he is the mayor of the town. And that's how he was talking to people. Can you imagine? So, but again, like you said, you would believe it in a town like that. And Bill, he did such a great job. I used to watch, what's his name? Nathan
Nathan
Fillion.
Fillion. Yep.
Yes, I used to watch him on Castle. So I
Hmm.
loved Castle. And I never ever finished Serenity, but I used to like watch that every now and then. But I do love the performances. I felt like everyone felt real. Again, it's like I wanted to be a part of that world. Brenda, I thought she did a good job. Just the wrong place at the wrong time, I guess. And that situation. And I do have a question. I could be wrong. I was trying to find out with that. But oh, and with the teenager, Kylie, I thought that she did a great job with that. Just seeing her, like, you kind of felt for her, imagine just taking like a spoiler zone, taking a bath, and then that thing just comes in there and she couldn't really help anyone. So that's really cool. But overall, all the performances, I think that everyone did a great job. Everyone had like their own personalities that just blended well together.
Yeah, I thought the performances of this movie were all pitch perfect. I thought Elizabeth Banks was terrific as Starla. I really think that, it could easily become a like a boys' boy movie where you have
Mhm.
Bill as sort of the lead or everything going on with Michael Rooker. But I really feel like Elizabeth Banks is the real like sort of anchor of this film. And I think she does a terrific job. And I agree that she did not marry for love, but I do think, and one of the things I liked about this movie is that yes, there's that ick factor there between their relationship that she obviously married this much older guy. But I really like that this movie takes the sort of stance of she's trying to love him.
Mhm.
She's really trying to make this marriage work. She does
Mhm.
not want to have others think of her as a gold digger, but I don't think that's really it. I really think she doesn't want to think of herself. I
Right.
think what she
Right.
really was looking for was a protector. And
Mhm.
obviously, throughout the setup of this movie, we see that there's this triangle. Nathan Fillion's character Bill is clearly in love with her, but obviously when she was young, because she was 17, Bill was not in a place that he could be that protector for her. And I like that the dynamic between Elizabeth Banks and Michael Rooker is not only believable, but I like that you know exactly what they're feeling, like what's going on. And I like that she is really trying, she really wants this marriage to work. I mean, from the first scene we see with them, it really does set up that like she's like maybe she's not really interested in him, but the next morning she does try to make an effort. And then when he's starting to things are happening and he's like now he's metamorphs. And one of my favorite creepy scenes is that field and when he like slithers away. But she goes to him and she's like, I do want this marriage to work, or I
Yeah.
said for better or for worse, and she meant it. And I really think Elizabeth Banks, who would go up to be such a star after this movie, all of them, um, some before, some after. I really think Elizabeth Banks did a wonderful job, and I really like that aspect of the relationship. Yes, Michael Rooker, though, a true horror staple. I mean, all the way back from Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer to The Walking Dead. He really, he was only in that first season or two, but like really made an impact. And
Mhm.
I think he's always really great in everything he does. And I believe effortless to be this Grant character, the most ridiculous name, but yes, he does a great job. And Greg Henry, who, yeah, the mayor, a Brian De Palma staple. And I feel like it's weird. There's been so many movies lately that I've seen him in. Even when I forgot he was in this and I started watching, I'm like, oh, Greg Henry. And you and I just did Raising Cain. He was in Raising Cain, and he's in like Body Double. And I know he's gone on to do other James Gunn related things. So they all
Guardians
have
of the
Michael Rooker,
Galaxy. Yeah.
etc. But yeah, I also thought that Kylie, I think her name's Tania something, she was great. They said I
Mhm.
watched some of the behind the scenes features and uh James Gunn said that like there probably more actors auditioned for her role than any other role.
Mm.
And it was the hardest to cast, but she just had this naturalistic quality about her, and I could not agree more. I think she seems like a regular teenager in it, and that makes everything that kind of happens to her, bathtub, but also with her family, all the
Mhm.
more terrifying. And like I said, I really think she's in the most authentically or traditional horror sequence of the movie. I think that goes to with her and everything that happens to her. But yeah, everybody's great. Brenda, you believe her as this sort of like, she's what could have happened to Starla if Starla hadn't gotten out. That was sort of what they kind of suggested. And I like this sort of juxtaposition between these two women. And again, going back to Michael Rooker and Elizabeth Banks, Starla and Grant, there is love there.
Mhm.
And I think that I like that he has that chance of like making Starla the sort of womb vessel, and he there's still enough Grant within him to choose not to go for Starla. Not that it's great that he goes for Brenda, but because he
Right.
loves Starla, he does not
Hmm.
infect Starla. And clearly the whole rest of the movie, and I really love that about this movie. Part of the comedy is like how, because of the way it's set up, everybody's like in love with Starla in the town as they become infected. I like the whole like it's the zombies, but instead of saying like brains, they're all like Starla. Like, and he's having like, because the first event, you have the Brenda explode. You don't know what's happening, and like people are like they had these things go in, but then the one guy like sits up and he's like confessing his heart to Starla. He's a vessel for Grant, but it's
Hmm.
just so bizarre and funny. But yeah, I really love the performances in it. It's a top tier. And before I forget, and I know I'm gonna forget, one of the first things when I watched this movie that I loved about it was the Air Supply song, "Girl, You're Every Woman in the World to Me." My brother, one of my older brothers had an Air Supply CD, and I remember listening to that and like making love out of nothing else. So when I first started watching this movie, and it's probably about 8 or 9 minutes in, that song is played. I'm like, what? They're playing Air Supply, and I think it just sets this tone because
Yeah.
that becomes a part of like a climax of the film. And I didn't want to forget to say that because I know I will if I don't say it now. But yes, overall, love the performances. As we get into the suspense though and everything, again, definitely it's under the comedy, and we could talk about the comedy, maybe intermix suspense and comedy, but I really think the grossness of this movie is one of the things that makes it work. I
Yeah.
think, like I said, the whole Brenda sequence, everything about it, and again, I think that's the scene that really encapsulates the horror, comedy, romantic comedy, drama. All of it is in that scene, and that whole sequence, I pee my pants laughing every time I watch it. Where she's like, "I'm just so effing hungry," and she's like, "Could you please just hand me that possum?" So again, I know we're into spoilers now, and I'm hoping most people have seen the movie, but again, quick setup, you have the small town, this meteorite hits it, this creature's in there, it basically infects Grant. He has these like tubes within him. We don't know what's happening yet, but he ends up like using these tubes into Brenda, this girl that he's almost gonna cheat on his wife with because he gets infected in the woods with it. And what happens is she becomes pregnant with all these slugs things, and she's just getting bigger and bigger. And she's eating nonstop and she can't see. Well, finally she just burst. And the first time I saw that, horrified, grossed out, but loved it. Like I said,
Hmm.
I do enjoy gore and horror movies. I'm not a big fan of like super realistic gore. I don't want to be too uncomfortable thinking like, oh, did somebody lose an eye here? But this kind of gore that's so over the top, love it. I love it. And so she explodes, and these creatures and these slithery things that are just everywhere, and they're coming over. But again, there's solutions. So Bill, and again, it's these moments that like show you who the real couple of the film is. Bill jumps on Starla, and they're like covered in them. And again, I love that the first time because it's not just as simple as like a zombie movie where somebody gets bit or if somebody gets touched. Like, you can touch them and come away. They can go in your mouth and you can pull them
Hmm.
out if you're lucky. You're lucky. And but anyway, in this scene, it's just so funny because this woman, so she's hungry, she's getting bigger and bigger because these creatures are like eating within her. And she's just like, I'm so effing hungry because she's got that southern accent. So effing hungry. Can you hand me that possum over there? And it's this dead, gross possum. It's so gross. But I love it. I love that scene. And like I said, my other favorite scene is the Kylie scene. I feel like that's the most like cringy because you see this girl very vulnerable in the bathtub, getting a little sassy with her mom, and you just see like over the window, this thing crawling. But what I do like about this movie is that it infects her whole family. We're talking about mom, dad, but also her little twin sisters, which I think is
Uh,
very brave. You don't
I.
expect that. And I like that they went with that. And it works because then the two girls are funny too. It's very cliched, like, Kylie, we're coming to get you. It's not meant to take itself too seriously. It's
Mhm.
meant to make you laugh as the audience. But anyway, what are some of your favorite what do you think of the overall suspense, comedy, the whole shebang?
So overall, the suspense, the comedy is on point because, like I said earlier, there were so many scenes which I'll get into that really made me laugh out loud. I had to pause it, take a break, go back and rewatch it again. And then even with the scenes, like one of my favorite scenes is so thrilling. It's in the beginning when Grant is in the woods with Brenda and they discover, this thing on the ground and they're looking at it. I'm not gonna lie, like I would look at it. I probably wouldn't get as close as he did when you saw like this little thing popping up and peeking out, and then it just stabs him right in the chest. And yeah, if I was Brenda, I would have ran. I would have tried to get help. She just went home, like
I'd be so out of there. No, 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 no.
right. Which is understandable because you know what? She doesn't seem like she's well off financially, and Grant is, so it could come off a certain way. They're in a small town, so she just decided to go home. Then, pretty much like the next day, the next night, he's hungry and he doesn't want to eat Starla, so he goes over to Brenda's, and Brenda lets him right in. She offers him some cheese and crackers, and he doesn't want cheese and crackers, Justin. So he he pretty much attacks it, and I love that scene. At first it was just very awkward because you don't really know what's happening. Her eyes are rolling back to the back of her head type of thing. But yeah, that scene though, when he first gets stabbed, that like creeped me out, and it was just like, ooh, type of thing. And then just to see that he pretty much Grant is, I don't really think that Grant's there anymore. Like they have his memories. So I thought that was pretty cool. And kind of like what you said earlier, I like the fact that it's not like permanent, type of thing when he infects people. But with Brenda, Brenda did not survive that.
Right.
I've never seen anything like that in a movie. And I didn't think that she was going to, I remember her, but I forgot that she pretty much exploded, and all the pieces went flying. So I love that part. And then I already talked about the beginning with the mayor. There's another scene with the mayor, after all this stuff that happened with Brenda, they attacked the police officers. Now they're in the car, driving, and the mayor's complaining about not having a Mr. Pibb like soda. And I get it though. It reminded me of, when everything's going wrong. And at this point, all you need is just one little thing,
Yes.
and that was pretty much the straw, like the last straw type of thing that just sent him over the edge. And I really liked him. I know he was terrible. He had such a dirty mouth. I don't know how he got elected, you know? But I really, really like this one. And I love the fact that, again, just going with the comedy, this is truly a horror comedy because it is funny, but it is still a terrifying situation. Not only is there sci-fi, but there's like body horror. It's gross, it's gooey. I love it. I just think that it's just so much fun. Like I feel like they did a great job.
It's just the whole package, a little bit of
Mhm.
everything. But before I forget, I realized I didn't really talk about Nathan Fillion, who, of all the performances, Nathan Fillion, obviously, and he's the hero of this film, but Nathan Fillion really does a great job with these sort of clumsy heroes. He's not really an anti-hero, but he's not exactly like Mr. Smooth
Right.
either. He's clumsy. He's not a buffoon though. He always walks that balance. Now I did watch Firefly and then Serenity the movie. I loved Firefly. I loved it because of him. I
Hmm.
thought that he was just such a great, I mean, all the characters in that show were great, but obviously he being the role he was, you needed to really like him to really like Firefly. But I actually saw Slither first, and I always thought like, oh, what is he going to be in? What is he going to be in? Or will I see him again? So when I did see Firefly, I now know his history past, how Firefly got canceled, and but then he got canceled and I was happy for him. But I really just think he's this super charming because he's this clumsy hero.
Yeah.
And I really like his dynamic with Elizabeth Banks. Clearly, they work well together. They play well together. But Nathan Fillion is one of those actors. He also was in an he was like a bad, like one of the big bads, they called him, in Buffy the TV series.
Hmm.
And now that I may have seen before I saw this, and I remembered that what I loved about him was that he was truly terrifying.
Hmm.
And because he does have that sort of good looking, nice guy
Yeah.
quality, I feel like those always make the best villains. Those are the ones that are super scary. And he has that sort of ability with his acting to be able to kind of play all those pieces. And I really think, like, although I think Elizabeth Banks is the anchor of this movie would not work without Nathan Fillion being
Right.
cast. Like, he was perfect in it. And like even moments like when he's running with Kylie later, and Kylie saves him from the deer, but he's sort of like, when we tell this story though, I'm gonna say I saved you. It could come off in such a bad way with anybody but Nathan Fillion. It takes that sort of quality. And I just saw again, I can't believe I like skipped over talking about him with the performances because I think that he's one of those things too. He's just fun. And obviously everybody got what kind of movie they were making, and
Mhm.
it really does have the whole package. But yeah, and speaking of Nathan Fillion, and in one of my favorite sequences, like I said, Kylie's sequence I feel like has the most traditional horror, and I love that she is vulnerable in the bathtub, creatures coming out. She's like running through the stairs, then has to break through the door, hop out the window, hop out on the roof, which are all things I love seeing. We've discussed this many times. You know, my favorite part of any horror movie is like a little chase sequence thing. So she jumps off, and I love that she jumped off, but she's in the car. And I really like the sort of, again, the humor of it with the family coming in, but then Nathan Fillion again jumps in. But speaking of his performance, and then my favorite sequence, I think again it encapsulates it, which is he comes over and like when the thing like spits at him and he's sort of like, wait, when did they start doing that? You know, it's these funny little, it always keeps you on your toes,
Right.
Slither, in a way that like you don't know what to expect, because at one moment you're going to be kind of scared, like in this sequence, or you're going to have some comedy and again some gross out moments, which then leads us towards the end of the movie. And I really like that we then come down to these like four main characters,
Mhm.
and you know, at the movie's midway point, and the ending really does sort of split for those four, because there's a, you know, at one point they get into a car crash and everybody kind of gets separated. Bill and Kylie are together. Elizabeth Banks as Starla is dragged off, and Gregg Henry, you know, well, he disappears for a moment, and we see where he ends up. And I like that each one kind of has their moment, but it's all relevant to different things going on. So you have, you know, Gregg Henry is pulled down into Grant's basement and he becomes a victim slash parasite zombie.
Mhm.
Kylie and Bill, you know, they kind of end up together. Bill finally gets to kind of be the hero. Kylie gets hit by a couch. And then Elizabeth Banks gets to finally stand up to Grant. And each one has their moment, though, within that. And I do want to emphasize, you had talked about how much you enjoyed Gregg Henry's performance in this movie as the mayor. I also did too. I think I said that, but I just wanted to say it again because he does say some really horrible things,
Mhm.
but he is it catches you off guard in a way that does make you laugh, and then you feel bad about laughing, but then he pulls it off in a way that's funny. And one of his funniest moments that aren't necessarily offensive, but I guess it still could be, is when he becomes infected and he sees them. And I love that the zombies, one of the things with the parasites are they get so embarrassed, some of them, the ones that are like becoming pregnant. And she's like, so he's down the base by Gregg Henry, and this one like older woman who's been like eating bodies and can't stop eating. She's like, don't you look at me. Don't you look at me. I don't know why. It just makes me crack up laughing. And so he's just like stunned, but he's now infected. And so you see the moment, and again, every woman in the world is playing throughout this montage of stuff happening. And you see he's been infected, and he crawls over, and he's like, you see the moment where he's like, okay, and he picks up an arm and just starts eating it. And again, I just think because of his performance, he pulls it off in a way, because of all of the four, you're the one who, he's the one, you always have that character that's so awful, you know they
Mhm.
gotta die, you know
Yeah.
something has to
No,
happen to him.
yeah.
And so it really does, and he does it. He knows that's his role, and he does it. But also, yeah, Starla, she wakes up, she's been dressed, you know, it's very dramatic. She's dressed in her white gown, or white like nightgown, and goes down the stairs. But she sees, you know, she knows that this parasite thing, you know, it's been on its own for billions of years. She uses that to she uses what she knows, the grant that's still in there, the tiny speck of it, or it's like drawn to that about Grant. And I don't think I think it's like a commentary that no other planet universe, that this thing, because we do find that this thing has gone from planet to planet, and it either impregnates everything or devours everything, and
Mhm.
ultimately devours everything and moves on. And that's what's happening now. Well, this time something different has happened. It's the first time it's kind of fallen in love, and it feels the angst that Grant feels. It feels the pain, the betrayal. Although Starla hasn't done anything, but it's Grant's ego, and it's clearly all his fears with their marriage. You know,
Mhm.
she's needed this protector, and I think that Starla really has tried to make their marriage work. But Grant, I'm sure, has always had some sort of insecurity being an older man, who has
Mhm.
money? Would Starla have chosen him? And
Right.
so all his insecurities are coming out, and she does use that to help destroy this monster. And again, that's why I think Elizabeth Banks is really the anchor of the film, and I love it. And then again, you have Bill and Kylie. Kylie comes in, she does help Starla,
Mhm.
but then again, she gets hit by a couch. And it's one of those, again, shocking. You're like, you kind of laugh, what? And she ends up okay, so it works out. And then
Right.
Bill comes in to be the hero. And it's one of the most horrifying hero moments when one of the things goes into him and he manages to keep the other one out. And I like that the movie has crafted it that you find out from Kylie you needed both of them, which is why I'm sure they had two of them. The
Mhm.
movie itself, it's a movie, they planned it so that he could still be okay in the end. But he has one in him. And that's awful, Xena. It's
Yeah.
horrifying and gross and it's awful. And you know, it's disgusting in the best possible way. But anyway, and I like that though he's the hero. He does get it. He drops the grenade. The whole point of them going to this police station. By the way, too, I almost forgot Jenna Fisher's in this. She went on to
Mhm.
be the Office. She was married to James Gunn at the time.
Yeah.
I always love Pam Beesly and seeing her in this, and it's great to see her because she's Pam Beesly of this town, literally. She's the secretary of the kind of head honcho guy. Like it's cool. I love it. And so but anyway, so they go to the police station, get this grenade, get to the house. He drops it into the pool because he's clumsy hero Bill. That's why we love Nathan Fillion. Anyway, he manages to throw the propane tank in there, but it's Starla that ends up shooting it and saving them all. And then it ends in this sort of happy ending, and the joke pulls is plays off or is paid off when Deer story comes up, and Bill's like, "Hey, Kylie, tell about that deer I saved you from," which really she had saved him from. But again, it's part of the humor and it ends on a fun note. But I loved the ending. I think it's very satisfying. Everything else about this movie is satisfying. This is one more thing.
Well, I agree with the ending. I felt like the ending was very satisfying. I'm not gonna lie, we kind of get a little hint of some, well, not really a hint, but that it's still around because of the cat,
Mm.
so at towards the end and stuff like that. And it's just like, I kind of want a sequel. I would love a sequel of this
Oh,
movie.
me too. Me too.
It was so much fun. And I love the ending. It just felt satisfying. And I had hope, that, ending, is showing us that there could be a potential sequel, but who knows? Anyway, I almost lost my train of thought, but there was something I did want to say outside of it. I just didn't want to forget. So I was saying what this movie reminded me of, and I mentioned like Tremors and Basket Case, just some different types of movies. And like I really do feel like he is a fan of this of that like type of subgenre. You could tell that he's someone who loves, I'm talking about James Gunn, he loves horror. Like I feel like he's one of us. And so I don't know why this movie gets such a bad rep with some things when it's just meant to be fun. And I agree with you, especially around the time when it came out, because I was just looking at, some of the reviews, and there were a lot of reviews where people just they weren't really feeling it. And that's fine. Like sometimes that happens. We all don't have to like the same movies. But yeah, I just think that it's surprising when it's meant to be fun. I feel like there's something in it for everyone. And then a cool thing about it is I thought that Dr. Carl, remember, Starla called him because
Mm-hmm.
this is when Grant said that he said that he it was just a bee sting and that he saw
Feasting. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, that is actually Rob Zombie's voice, and I thought that was
Oh, I
so
didn't know that.
cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I did not know that. I love that.
there's there's just so many like little pieces in this. I love seeing
Winks and nods.
yeah, Lloyd Kaufman's in it, but I don't know. I feel like again, it was just a very satisfying ending. It was still like funny, it was still suspenseful. I still wanted to know more about it. And just touching on Bill, because I don't really feel like, I mentioned a lot about him. You kind of reminded me of that. I felt so safe with Bill. We all felt as the viewer that, Starla should totally be with Bill, but I get it, again, it's security, type of thing. And now maybe they'll just have their happy ending and they can adopt Kylie. So it
Right.
just seems it's a happy ending for all. I just feel like this is just such a fun, like pleasurable type of watch. There's splatter. It feels very 80s, 90s, science fiction. And another thing I thought of too is just the fact that if you're someone who likes David Cronenberg, I think that you'll like this one, except it's like the diet version,
Right.
of it.
Right.
So But yeah, I just feel like it's just such a fun movie.
It did not do well, Slither, at the time, financially, but I do think that it's a cult movie now, and I do think that some of the mainstream people, critics at the time, did not give it the best review, and almost all of them mentioned the fact of like, ah, here we go, another zombie movie again. But you
Mhm.
can't like if you as a critic, I feel like that's like you can't. I don't trust a critic like that. Like some people want to see all these movies all the time. What is this movie for this audience? And this is a great movie. And sometimes, horror comedies, they can be really hit or miss, but this one is pitch perfect. The tone of
Yeah.
it maintains the tone the entire movie, and it's a perfect balance of genuine scares, jump scares, but
Mhm.
also laugh out loud moments that are all intentional. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's an homage. And it's like what you were saying, it's pieces of everything, like the diet version of Cronenberg. But it's an homage to all this stuff. It's a reference to those B flick horror sci-fis of back in the day. Those weren't meant to be, Citizen Kane. They weren't
Right,
meant to be Suspiria,
right.
Halloween. Like it's meant to be just fun. And Slither does work. And it's like if you want to look at it in terms of like high art or going to see like a theater or a musical, you going to see something like Les Mis or Phantom of the Opera or whatever versus going to see Evil Dead the musical, which I've seen many times. And I love Les Mis. I love Jack. Those are my favorite musicals. But I have had just the experience I have going to Les Mis is a very specific experience. Going to see Evil Dead the musical, I'm wanting a completely different experience, and they're both equally valuable. And I think a movie like Slither is just as valuable as the other movies. You can't have movies that are these sincere horror movies without some of these horror comedies. Because
Right.
if you do, then the terror of those other movies is going to start to lessen. It's going to lose some of its shine. It's
Mhm.
movies like this that are a little silly and make you laugh at it, whether it be like parodies like Scary Movie or Scream. You kind of need that, or else you just start laughing at Scream. It's an outlet then to you can still sincerely love
Mhm.
Scream, but also laugh at it when you're watching something like Scary Movie. Watching any of the like so-called top tier horror movies, your appreciation for them grows when you watch movies like Slither because you can just laugh and have a good time with it. And I think that's where Slither really is at its value. But overall, yeah, I think that this is a movie that just everybody needs to add to their list and see it. It brings me so much joy talking about it. It brings me so much joy watching it. And I'm gonna watch it again pretty soon. I guarantee it.
I'm right there with you. I'm most likely going to watch it again. I will never go that long again, from watching it because again, it felt like a brand new movie. I just feel like sometimes, like what you said it perfectly. Sometimes you just need something that's fun. It's not meant to be like super profound. This is an entertaining, gooey, messy body horror.
Yes.
And I feel like if you're someone who likes horror, you like sci-fi, you like romance, you want to laugh, this is the one for you.
Yeah, this is the horror movie for the horror fan that is looking for a little bit of fun, a little bit of style, a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of drama, a little bit of romance, a little bit of it all in one package, and you're gonna leave feeling entertained and satisfied. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House. Are you a fan of Slither? What is your favorite sci-fi, B-flick, zombie, parasite movie? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you, Zena Dixon, the real queen of horror, for joining us tonight. You can find Zena over at Wicked Horror, realqueenofhorror.com, or on YouTube under her Real Queen of Horror moniker. I'm Justin. You can also find me at Wicked Horror or over at 41 Pop Culture or on Twitter at WKD Horror Justin, like Wicked Horror Justin. Zena, thank you so much for talking about Slither with me. I had such a good time.
Thank you. I had an awesome time as well.
And we'll see y'all soon. Bye.